All right, today we're going to slider tune this quad in 2 packs. So the first part is the setup for tuning. It's going to pop into our filters tab. Just in general, for a 5-inch, I boost these up to 1.5 generally. I usually do 2 harmonics. I vary from the fray there a little bit. I go to 125 on the min for that. I'll set the dynamic notch to 0 on width, set the Q to 250, set this to 125, and this to 325 or 350, whichever. Save that. Of course, I'm going to get my rate set up, and you can see how I have it here. I usually set TPA to 0.75, and I move this up my breakpoint to 1750 so that TPA doesn't really enact until 75% throttle. So what I'm going to do is a couple things. I'm going to disable D-min. So this is a tuning flight, and I want to enable expert mode. I'm going to bring the feed forward slider all the way down and set the feed forward transition to 1. That's a good simple way to kind of negate feed forward but still keep the sliders active. I want D-min out of the picture, so I simply have the P and the D term, and I want to try to figure out this PD balance right here and get that kind of lined in. 30, 32 is good for a starting D term with the filter I have set up there. Again, if you're concerned about filtering, maybe have those sliders at 1 instead of moving them right up to 1.5. But from here, the last thing I want to do is set my I-term relax to 10. This will lock out the I-term from accumulating since we don't have any feed forward, and we're going to have quite a bit of lag on the gyro, which is fine. We'll bring feed forward back into the mix in a little bit. For folks interested in black box, I usually set this to 1 kilohertz. Gyro scaled is the debug mode, but we're not going to be looking at black box specifically in this video. The other thing I want to pay attention to is my ESC settings. I want to set my motor timing for a 5-inch, the 1750 kV motors on 6S, and I want to set that timing to 23, 22, 23, 24, something of that nature. I'm going to leave Demag the same, and I want to make sure my PWM frequency is 24 kilohertz. 48 gives a little bit smoother motors, but it also reduces the torque in the motor. So I want all the torque I can get for increased prop wash performance. Okay, well that is it. Let's go fly this and see what we get. Okay, so here we're just going to fly around a little bit. We're going to do a lot of sharp moves, flips and rolls, and we're going to see if we can get any bounce back. And it's actually the opposite of what you think. If you don't have bounce back, we want to adjust the slider until we get bounce back and then slide it off a little bit. The reason being is you want the highest P term you can get without having bounce back. So we're going to adjust that P to D balance slider. So actually moving the slider down gives you higher P term or lowers the D term, honestly. And we want to find that balance where we have as much P as we can get, or that slider can be as low as it can be without having bounce back. So let's see what the defaults show us here. All right, we're going to do a little DJI here. Let's just do some I don't see any bounce back. So let's bring it in, move that slider so we can get some bounce back. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to move that slider, actually, I'm going to move that down too, I think, because I really do want to get some bounce back here. This D term here is kind of getting kind of low, so at the same time, I want to keep that in the 30s because that seemed pretty good. So what I'll do, you know, if you looked here, this was 30 and 32, so as I move this down, I want to then now move this up. Used to not have this problem until they changed how this slider worked in 4.2, and this is why I told them not to. But anyways, that's what we're going to do. We're going to move this down and then this up a little bit so this D term stays about the same. All right, so this is with the slider moved down 2 notches on the P to D balance. Still don't see any bounce back. I don't really hear it either. Whoa. Still no bounce back. All right, let's see what we can get. We can do it some more. It's crazy. Okay, we'll move this down another notch. Again, that moves the D terms down a little bit, so we'll bring that back up. We'll see how she goes. Okay, we'll move this down another 2 notches, and then we'll bring this D term back up, say right there, and we'll see how she goes. Gosh, man. Little bit. Oh man, if you can hardly see that. Man, it's hard to see. It's only on these. Still very little though, if anything. Let's move it down another one and see what happens. Well folks, I'm sorry to say, I kind of lied to you. I need to look at logging. I think this is really low. Then I couldn't believe I couldn't see it. I swear I thought I saw a bounce back. It was ever so slight on that one twitch move, but that's where logging comes in to help. So I don't know. I know logging seems like the scary thing, but it's the easiest thing ever. You just have it set so it logs. Once you come in, you plug in, you hit this activate mass storage device. That comes up as a drive letter right here. The last log was that. I just double clicked on it. Here it is, and you can see the overshooting going on. I don't get any bounce back much at the end of the moves, but I do see overshooting in the traces in the quick moves, the snap moves here that I'm snapping back and forth. You can see that's an overshoot. So when this gyro goes past the set point, that's all an overshoot. So long story short, I couldn't help myself but look because I found it unreasonable. But that goes to show too that it's so hard to see. Maybe you guys saw it a lot easier than I did, but man, I only felt like I saw it in that one because you don't see the overshoot at the end of a flip or a roll. You see the overshoot as you're entering the flip or the roll and everything's spinning. So in the end, my PD balance, I do have some overshooting there, so I'm gonna bring that up. I think I'll bring that up one more here just to bring it back up a little bit. Okay, so you can see with bringing it back up one notch, it's still getting some overshooting here. Not on all the moves, but like a bunch of these are pretty good shape, but some of them, and I'm getting some overshooting here. Not that I care too much about that. I care more about these little jerk moves here. It's pretty good. I guess I only get it a little bit here and there. So what I might do is just leave it at what that was, because you want a pretty good high P gain. I can always come back, and it's so easy with the sliders to just tweak that up or down when I'm checking out prop wash. You can see here on the pitch axis, I'm not really getting any overshoot, just a little bit there. So I know with looking at that, my PD balance is somewhere around 0.7 or 0.8. So you could go either way. We're just going to leave it at 0.7 right now. I like a nice high P term. I find it does seem to help with a little bit of prop wash handling to really have that P term on the limit. And I don't see any overshoot in any of the, like there's no bounce back conditions, so why not? Okay, so the next thing we want to do is adjust this PD gain slider. So what we want to do here is turn this up, and you keep moving this up until you get trilling and oscillation. Now, I've flown this quad before and messed around with a little bit. I've not really tuned it like this, but I've tuned it around a little bit before, and I know you know, I got to go above 40 to start to get trilling oscillation with this. So let's, and you can see I can't get above 40 here. So what we can do is just move this overall master slider up, and then you can see I can start to get up. I'm around 50 is where I should get that trilling oscillation. So let's just keep it at 50. and I'll show you what that sounds like, and then also we can look at what it looks like in logging. Now obviously on this one, this is where you need to be a little careful. If you have a ton of noise, like this quad is pretty good noise-wise, and I didn't go crazy on the sliders either, but if you moved up the sliders a little bit and are kind of like blind to the noise thing altogether, and you start to move this PD balance up, you know, I would just move it up one notch at a time. Just be careful. Don't be arming it, you know, looking over top of it, because that trilling oscillation can ramp up and run away on you. So just be prepared to disarm if you need to. But we're trying to find where that trilling oscillation starts and then back it down one. It's almost just like the PD balance thing. You got to get to where it's bad and then back it down one notch. Same thing here. You want to move those PD gains up till you get the trilling oscillation back down 1 or 2 notches actually. And so yeah, let's check it out. So I'm just going to do a line of sight on this. You'll be ready to disarm. Ooh, you hear that? It's bad. So you don't want to mess with it. Once you get to that trilling oscillation, you got to disarm. The motors can get really hot really quick. So as I mentioned, we got that trilling oscillation at D term of 50, so we're going to need to back this down. One option is to back down the PD gain slider, but honestly I didn't really like pushing up the default, the master, because I'd prefer to keep these I terms at the default. So I'm going to go ahead and back those down, back this default down, and you can see it brings my D terms down with it. The ratio is keeping all the same with this PD balance. That's the awesome thing about the sliders, is that I don't have to worry about this balance anymore. So I'm going to just bring this default down. That brings these down to 42, 45. Again, when you hear that trilling oscillation, you're going to need to back down a couple, like you saw I backed down 2 notches there. If you're doing the PD gain slider, you probably need to back down 2 or 3. If it's the master, maybe 2 notches down, because it has a little bit more throw in it. And let me show you what that log looks like with the trilling oscillation here. So looking at the log, it kind of looks like what it sounds like. It's just a whole bunch of vibration that starts up. You can see for me it starts up around 40 some odd percent throttle, 43% throttle, and that's where you could apply some TPA here. So you could set your TPA breakpoint down, so as the throttle gets up above 43, it starts to reduce the PIDs down, and it would linearly kind of reduce the PIDs as you keep going higher in throttle. That's more of an advanced tuning thing. I'm not going to mess with that. Do note that TPA is at 12 something as a default for a breakpoint, like 1235, I think, like that. So that's built in unless you move it up. And what's the point of TPA? Well, that would give you more lower PID authority, you know, between, you know, 0 and, I don't know, wherever the breakpoint is. If you set the breakpoint at 1300, it would give you lower PID authority, because I could keep that higher D gain and I still wouldn't get the trilling, because as I go above that breakpoint, obviously it'd start to ramp the PIDs down from there. But that's the point of TPA. We're not going to get into that for this. I'm happy with what it is now. This quad's pretty powerful, and let's go to the next step. So we are just about done at this point. The next step is I'm going to go ahead and set my feed forward transition so I can get full feed forward gains right at center stick. With this at 0, as soon as you start to move the stick, you get the full feed forward gains here. When I was at 1, actually I only got full feed forward gains when the stick was all the way at the end point. So at half stick I was getting 50% of these gains. At quarter stick I was getting 25% of these gains. Again, we're setting this to 0 so I get these full gains right at 0 stick, because I want feed forward to kick us into the move. By setting it at 1 before, I was trying to really negate feed forward as much as I could without losing the sliders. Here I want to undo that, get feed forward back, and then start using the sliders. I'm going to bring that feed forward up. Feed forward's a pretty non-sensitive thing, so I'm going to bring this up to like 150. Mileage will vary. Some people don't like feed forward at all. Just keep the slider down. You can keep that transition at 1 if you're like the smoothie stuff, but if you want more sharp stick moves and responses, obviously you just set this to 0 and just keep moving this slider up and down based on your feel. If you're trying to get it to really like track set point, you know, looking at logs is the only way to really do that. You'd have to obviously just look at logs and keep moving this up until you can see that line come into track set point. So sometimes people wonder what feed forward does and is it useful or whatnot. At the end of the day, without feed forward or some sort of boosting mechanism with, they say, standard PID controller, PI and D, you will always have this kind of lag here. You can see this is with the tuned, moving everything up, things of that nature. I have this lag because P-term reacts to PID error. So you have to have PID error first before you can even react to it. So you're going to get a lag. That lag on this quad, which is a 6S, you know, pretty high test quad, is about 13 milliseconds. So it's about the same lag as you have in your Fat Shark goggles. So you're basically doubling your Fat Shark goggle lag. What we can do with feed forward now is keep moving that slider up to get this to track closer to the sticks. This green line is our sticks. This cyan line here, that is the quad's motion. So we want to get this closer to here. Let's see what we get with moving our feed forward slider up. Okay, since feed forward's mostly a feel thing, I'm just going to do some line of sight stuff and I'll talk you through it, and then we'll look at the log real quick, because again, you can't feel my stick, so the best thing I can show you the effects of feed forward and actually what it does is just by looking at a log. With all what we've done so far, that was just one pack down. Now we're on the second pack, just starting it. So here I went to 352 on set point at this point, and then I did the mark point and brought it out to, and I'm at around 348, so I can't get to exactly 352. This one's, if I go one more step further, it's 376. So you can see before it was 13 milliseconds, now it's 7 milliseconds. So I've halved that latency in response to the quad by using feed forward. And there was no other way to do that. You have to implement some sort of D-term kick or feed forward to do that. You can't do it with just more P-term, because if you increase the P-term, you're going to get more overshoot, which is going to make your prop wash performance worse. So feed forward, some sort of advanced kick, like a feed forward fundamental or a D-term kick fundamental, are the only way to reduce a standard PID controller's latency for sharp stick moves. In the CLI, I'm going to type get ff underscore. I'm going to look for feed forward boost. It's right here. I'm going to copy. I'm going to type that and type set feed forward boost. I'm going to set that to 30. What that will do is it will bring on feed forward. It mixes in some of the linear stick movement, not with your rates, and it's going to mix that in a little bit more. Again, this is a feel thing. If you want like super soft stick movements in the middle, you know, I recommend actual rates with that sensitivity of 10. And if you're really just in the cinematic flying, I probably would keep feed forward all the way off. But if you want some sharpness, you probably wouldn't have actual rates at a sensitivity of 10. You'd probably boost your rates up and things of that nature. Looking down here, this is when I was doing those step moves, and I was just doing it line of sight. You can see here, nice tracking. This is the kind of stuff for racing. You know, you're not going to be doing full rate flips and rolls. You're going to be doing this kind of stuff where you're twitching left, twitching right, back and forth. And you can see how my quad is right on the sticks. That's actually locked, guys. Not like all these other firmwares that don't have any kind of feed forward or anything. And I look at their logs and there's this huge gap between set point and gyro. And everybody's like, oh, it's so locked. It's like, no, it's not locked. You're just used to the delay. This is actually locked, where your gyro is following your set point right on it. That's what true locked is. You can see it here. This is locked. So you can see my twitch moves for like a racing kind of setup is pretty locked. A little bit overshoot here. And there's other ways to deal with that. We can use D-min as kind of a D-boost, so we could turn on D-min and have the lower values be the upper. We can obviously reduce feed forward. We can do a number of things. Reduce the PD balance just slightly, but you wouldn't want to do that too much because that affects prop wash performance. So what I think I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually just bring the feed forward down 2 notches because I don't want to keep chasing the rabbit, and I want to go down into the CLI here and go into here and bring up my feed forward boost. So type again get ff underscore. There's my feed forward boost. I don't want to go crazy with this, so maybe I'll just take it up to 35 just to give it a little, maybe you'd take it up to 40, 35, 40. Okay, so with these settings, let's go out and get a full flight because that's what I came here to do. I don't have, you know, a full second battery left, but I have enough to get a nice little flight in. I'm going to bring up my anti-gravity to 15 because this quad with the underslung battery has an issue when I do a throttle chop that it kind of wobbles down. Trying to solve that a little bit more, and we're working on some, or Chris Thompson's working on some code to hopefully improve that a little easier. But for right now, I'm going to just crank my anti-gravity up to 15. If you're a racer, you may want to move this cutoff now up that you're tuned in feed forward. So the closer your gyro tracks your set point, the less you actually need iTurn relax. So if your gyro is on set point at all times, you could technically turn off iTurn relax, and then as you're doing sweeping turns or Jacob's ladders, you wouldn't have the iTurn kicking off. If you want to keep it on just for good measure, typical advice is to move this cutoff up to like 25 or 30 just so the iTurn stays engaged, you know, for like sweeping moves, Jacob's ladders like I just talked about. If freestyle, I would just leave this at 10. All right, fellas, well, that's a wrap. I can see the video in editing here is getting up on to 20 minutes. minutes. If you're interested in seeing the flight after the final tune, please head over and check out my Patreon page. We'll have a midweek post on that. We'll also talk about some other advanced feed-forward CLI commands like spike limit, max rate, and feed-forward smoothing factor. With that said, I hope this broader range topic of talking about how to get your quad set up and doing the step moves to get your PD balance tuned. Then also to how do you tune PD gain, with moving it up till you get oscillations and then bring that back down. And then finally, mixing back in feed forward and some final tweaks on your iTerm Relax. I hope you found that useful and helpful. Thanks everybody again for your time, and I hope this did help.
And smash that like button, please. 'Cause then if you guys get me 1 billion likes, then I can make videos that are Fortnite. So, do you want Fortnite videos or this video? What's better?